I want to talk perhaps about your TED Talk on the power of repair. Why do you think this struck a chord with people? And what resonated with people from that?
Classic example is you yell at your kid for something, right? So I'll use this example, which is different than the one in my TED Talk, because it also leads to some, common questions. So my kid's stalling in the morning. Like, I got to get my kid to school because also when I drop my kid at school, I have to get to work and my kid's late, I'm late, the whole thing. We're all so rushed. And my kid is saying, I don't know, whatever they're saying. I'm not going to school today. You can't make me go to school. I'm not putting on my shoes. You put on my shoes. And you're thinking, like, I have an 8-year-old. Like, they have to put on their shoes, right? And then we get to some crescendo moment where as a parent, and I'll say me, myself, because I have this too, I just yell and scream at my kid. What is wrong with you? You don't do anything. You're 8 years old. You're never going to amount to anything in your life if you can't put on your shoes, or, you're so selfish. You're going to make me late. You turned me into a monster. Why can't you listen the first time we say this thing? Mm-hmm. Depending on our kid's temperament, they react in different ways. If they're kind of in the more people-pleasing type, that immediately stops them. They're like, oh no, my parent's mad at me. I'm going to be good. Mostly just because I really need to see that they reflect that I'm a good kid. I need that. If you have another temperament kid, they use this as a way of like, oh, you want to fight? I'll show you a fight. And they're like, I am not putting on my shoes,
That was me.
Right. That is my third kid. Love him. What order are you?
I'm first.
You're first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I was a pretty defiant little kid.
Right.
At points.
And so then you get through the moment. You get through it. And then I think after drop-off, there's this immense heaviness as a parent. Mm-hmm. And you're cycling through different things that, again, whatever your voice is, might be your own voice, or it's probably the voice you've internalized from your own upbringing in terms of how people would have responded to you if you were your kid in that moment. But it's some version of blame. It's either blame in or blame out. It's either I'm an awful parent, why can't I stay calm, and why can't I just get through the morning? And then that usually cycles with I have an awful kid, and my kid's a sociopath, and they're going to go to jail, and they're never going to amount to anything. And either way, you're blaming. Where repair, right, would be saying to your kid at some point, hey, I screamed at you earlier. That probably felt scary. And this will be the kind of maybe the start of something controversial. It's never your fault when I yell. And I'm working on staying calmer. So even when I'm frustrated, I can use a calmer voice. Like, I'm sorry. That would be a repair. I'm kind of going back to a moment that felt bad. Kind of reopening that part of the chapter. I'm taking responsibility for my behavior. I'm giving my kid a story to understand what happened. And I'm kind of talking about what I would do differently the next time.
All right. This is great grist for the mill. And part of the reason, and we talked about this a little bit before recording, that I was excited to have you on and have a conversation is that the tools you're talking about really apply everywhere. And they're echoed by a lot of folks people would not necessarily associate with parenting, like Jocko Willink, Navy SEAL commander, extreme ownership. And I want to use that. There are many other examples that I could give where I feel like what we will discuss in our conversation can be applied many different places, many different dojos for very similar tools and toolkits. Okay. With that said, I suspect one line where people maybe got stuck, and you know exactly what I'm going to say, is it's never your fault when I yell at you.
Yes.
All right. Part of me loves that because, just to invoke the great name of Jocko again, who did his first ever interview on this podcast 100 years ago. When you own things, you give yourself a degree of agency.
Yes.
Right? But also overly blaming yourself can be the flip side of maybe taking on excessive responsibility for other people's actions and feelings and so on, meaning sort of codependent or otherwise. So I heard everything you said, but I suppose like some listeners, I was like, always, never. These absolutes are very strong words. Mm-hmm. Why say that particular line?
Yeah. And when I share a script, to me, it's often words that are representative of kind of principles. Mm-hmm. I never like to get too stuck on words. I actually gave those words an example in part because I think it does bring up a lot of questions. But I never want someone to hear this and think, okay, I got to write down that exact word.
Right.
In general, take responsibility for your actions, give your kid a story, say what you do differently the next time. And I actually would hope anyone listening would say, I think I have my own brand of that. Amazing. That's better for you and your kid than my brand. So with that in mind, it's never your fault when I yell. Here's why I think that's powerful, even if you don't say it, to discuss and really think about. The way we react to our kid, yes, has to do with the situation in front of us, but we actually react to the set of feelings in our own body combined with the circuitry we have to manage those feelings. And I think the biggest thing to think about is that circuitry, those skills we have to manage emotions, literally predated our kids' existence. That was there so far before them. Now, when my kid doesn't listen and the morning is delayed, I feel frustrated. And that feeling is definitely co-created with my kid. Separating frustration from my ability to manage the frustration are two really different things. And telling a kid, basically, you make me yell, you turn me into a monster, is actually holding your kid responsible for your set of skills to manage your feelings. And the other reason, and then I'll be quiet for right now, that I think it's so powerful is I think about my son. I don't know, it could be my daughter, whatever. He's married one day, let's say, and he has some partner, and I don't know, he had a really bad day at work. And he comes home, and for some reason I'm at his house visiting, and his partner is like, oh man, I forgot to get toilet paper from the store. And then he sits down for dinner, and maybe his partner like ordered him the wrong thing. I don't know, and he yells at her. And I hear him saying, well, if you just got toilet paper and ordered me the right thing, like I wouldn't be yelling at you. And I picture the cringe moment, like, oh my God, that's like the creepiest thing. Like seriously?
And you're like, did I install that software?
And then we hear ourselves say to our kids all the time, if you just listened the first time, I wouldn't have yelled. Or like, okay, well, if you were just calmly playing with your sister, then you wouldn't get this reaction from me. And if that creeps us out down the line, if we wouldn't say, I would be so proud to hear my kids say that to a partner, then I don't know why we think that's a good idea to say to our kids when they're young.